there with the. I think you have your own. Excellent. Yeah. Good. Great. Hello. Thank you very much.
Charlie.
Okay, so I guess I want to start with, you guys have been playing the direct game for a while. I was looking at one of your many fabulous Lenny Henry videos the other night and saw that back in over a year ago, you first started running ads that said we have saver rates, direct is best. And I wondered, what was it that the process you went through as a business, what was it that drove you to decide let's have a focus on this?
Well, it's been a long-standing part of the Premier Inn business model. So I'd love to claim that I'm some sort of superstar genius and it's all down to me. But actually, when the business was founded 15 years ago, one of its founding tenets that is critical, I think, to the success of the business was to be direct. And that's because we're a value player. And as a value player, you've got to manage your cost base and you've got to manage your price. And therefore, any type of commission-based distribution channel that builds a cost in that ultimately you have to pass through on price to a customer puts that value proposition at risk. So it's been a long-standing principle. It's not been something that we've done recently overnight. And we've always, therefore, tried to manage any third-party distribution channel relatively judiciously so that we preserve the purity of the value proposition. And frankly, the marketing campaign that you talked about, Charlie, was just a long, it's just part of the evolution, really, that we've been pursuing over the last 15 years.
And now that we see so many other big brands get on board with that as well and also run their direct is best kind of campaigns, what do you see for the future? Do you think that it is now from here on in, hotels are going to have better rates direct for closed user groups and that's how things will evolve? Do you think independents will follow?
I mean, someone talked about pricing earlier. I mean, ultimately pricing will be driven by the fundamentals of supply and demand in the marketplace. The hotel industry generally sees demand boom, RevPAR grows, then demand comes off and RevPAR slows and supply waxes and wanes across that cycle. I think from a distribution perspective, I think what will happen actually is price will be part of the overall hotel proposition. I think the industry as a whole, and certainly at Premier Inn, what we're trying to do is think about the proposition in its broadest sense. Not just how you might use pricing as a factor to win a customer, but how you think about the product, how you think about integrating the physical experience with the digital experience so that you can provide a seamless service to customers. How you think about integrating your staff into that experience, whether chatbots will ultimately become something you'll start integrating into your service experience will be interesting. So I think those tools will become actually much more important than simply trying to use pricing as a crude tool to drive a customer to your offer. I think you've got to think much more broadly about what that customer wants and factor that into all aspects of the proposition moving forwards.
And so before you became managing director, you were marketing and strategy director. How does the business sort of work together so that, because it feels like the product is part of the marketing? So
yeah, I mean, fundamentally, we've always taken quite a simple approach. I think this is true probably for limited service hotels more broadly. We think a few things really matter to customers, and we focus very, very hard on those things in terms of the product proposition. And really, for us, that's a great night's sleep. That's why you see the bed often heroing in our ads. It's a great, hot, powerful shower. It's a clean, comfortable room. It's great staff service, and it's a breakfast. And fundamentally, they're the things we really focus on. And in the marketing, we try and bring that to life for customers. We try and do it in a creative way. Lenny's obviously been hugely successful for us over the last 7 or 8 years as part of that brand campaign. But really, you're just trying to really tell the truth to customers and set the expectations about what you offer and why that's important, and then consistently deliver it time after time after time.
Actually, and the consistency is interesting because I was watching through from, 2012, was it? Lenny Henry's first appearance in your ads?
Yeah.
So over a long period of time, you've kept a very consistent, if you haven't seen the Premier Inn adverts, I highly recommend them, they're quite amusing, but a very consistent message about beds first and foremost. Is that a challenge, like a business of your size, that's growing and whatever else, to keep consistently sending the same message?
Setting the same message is challenging only because anybody who works in marketing and has a creative agency will know all creative agencies get bored having to tell the same message again and again and again. And part of your challenge is to keep them sort of honest about what's true about the brand and then tell it in ever more interesting ways with any new campaign. But I think the product investment and the focus on the basics is critical more today than it ever has been before, because online has created a very, very transparent environment in which customers can shop. And I think big brands, the power of the brand is still important, but when a customer can see the rating of other customers at a property level, then you really need to make sure you're delivering consistency across all of your properties, because the consumer is using other consumers as a form of endorsement as much as the big brand campaign on the television. So it's all aspects of your marketing mix that you need to be managing now in a balanced way.
Okay, so consistency is key, particularly as you've got a brand promise across multiple hotels. So what do you find yourself doing now when you go and visit a hotel or you're assessing how a region's doing? What do you look for personally?
Well, if it's an existing hotel, I'm not an operator by background, but one of the things that my operational teams will do is we have a very detailed checklist that will go into the hotel to check the standards are there. For me personally, if I'm going to appraise a new hotel scheme, we tend to look at local factors. So location is still overwhelmingly the number one purchase driver for customers in the UK, and therefore the location is king. And we'll always make sure that we're in a prime location. We're near good quality local demand drivers, whether they're both business or leisure, ideally a mix of both, because that helps you for your midweek and your weekend occupancy. And then generally we just like to look at the situation of the site. Can we manage the fabric of the building so that we can integrate the reception and F&B experience within the hotel so that it feels like sort of a seamless end-to-end experience to the customer.
And obviously you're looking for, I guess, slightly different setups than other hoteliers because you've got to focus on limited service. And that's been, I guess, a great part of your growth, that focus again. What is it that's made the limited service segment grow so quickly? And how do you define it maybe as well?
Well, I think customers generally, for most trip types, shop on a very core set of purchase criteria. And generally, we're pretty honest at Premier Inn. Most people don't come to a Premier Inn because they're desperate to stay at a Premier Inn. They're coming to Premier Inn because they're going to go and do something else. Yeah. And therefore, what you need to do is you just need to make sure you don't let them down. So as long as you're providing the basics I described earlier and enabling them to go on, whether it's a business meeting or a weekend break with the lads or going to a wedding, that they're absolutely going to go and have the best time because they know they've slept well, they know you've given them a great breakfast to start the day, and the staff have made them feel great as they're on the way out the door. So I think if you focus on those things, what it enables you to do is it enables you to build a business model that's more efficient than probably a lot of the prevailing business models in the sector. And because of that productivity, it's that cash that we generate, which means we can reinvest it back into the customer experience and ensure all of our hotels are providing really consistent quality products. And then we can start investing it in assets like digital, like dynamic pricing, to make sure that the overall commercial and consumer proposition sort of is standout.
Because you'll have far fewer people in a property than a traditional hotel. So some roles that wouldn't happen at a property level but might be regional. Yeah. Do you think that might be a future trend or something that hotels have to do? The director of sales and marketing role, for example, might be something that some hotels move away from?
Well, I think different hotels have different models. There's lots of great hotel businesses. IHG is a great business. It works differently to how we work at Premier Inn. And I think whatever business you're in, it's often better to stick to the core of what you're great at and really focus on improving that than trying to try and copy what someone else is doing down the road. It's always better to leverage your strengths. The key thing for us from a staff perspective is, although we operate with maybe less roles than a traditional mid-market or luxury hotel operator, the team is still massively important to the Premier Inn business. We invest hugely in our teams. We don't try and run the staffs on a shoestring labour budget, because ultimately, if it's a simple proposition, one of the things that makes our hotels great to be in, and in fact I'd say the primary thing that makes our hotels great to be in, is the team. And we like the team to bring their character out. We recruit specifically for people who've got the right attitude. We train them. We encourage them not to be too robotic, but to interact with our guests. And I think that gives our hotels a bit of character and a bit of charm.
Okay, great. Any questions at this stage? I have many more. I'll keep going. No? Okay, great. There's quite a lot of technology, and there has been for a while, in the properties, checking in sort of at kiosks and the like. How do you feel like technology will evolve to deliver better customer service? Are there key things you're looking at in the future?
Well, I'll be a bit careful about what we're specifically looking at,
Okay.
because I don't want to let everyone else steal a march on us. I think what will happen is there's no question in my mind that technology is going to start enabling parts of the customer experience. I mean, the most obvious example that most people in the industry are currently looking at is how to automate check-in, ideally through some sort of mobile experience. And I don't think anyone's quite kind of nailed it. A lot of our new hub hotel, what we try to do in our hub concept is to seamlessly link the digital shopping experience with the in-stay experience. We've got, quite a lot further than we have probably with the core Premier Inn proposition, but there's more to do. I think in time, if you look at services like Just Eat, you look at services like Laundrap, there's lots of technology services out there that I think hoteliers could start to integrate with and maybe do some interesting things with. The challenge, of course, is hoteliers are going to have to think much more about their core architecture, their systems infrastructure than they have done before. We probably spent most of our time 10 years ago talking about linen, towels, cleaning rooms. We're going to start talking about things like middleware, and that's going to require a different set of skills, I think, to win over the next 10 years than maybe it was in the last 10.
Okay, great. And now I'm still looking around. John, put your hand up at any stage if you feel. Oh, there we go, Kevin.
Saved you.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit, Simon, about your distribution strategy, how you use OTAs.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on some of the things that you've heard this afternoon?
Yeah, well, Charlie said we're 80% direct. We're actually about 93% direct now.
Wow.
About 85% of that comes through our core platforms, our own digital assets, and then the rest comes through more traditional voice channels. We have, as I said earlier, we've always taken quite a sort of circumspect, cautious approach to distribution. We do work with one partner, Booking.com. We've worked with them for a very long time. The reason we work with those guys is because we think we can partner with them, and they are hugely helpful to us because we're predominantly a UK-only business. We do have a few hotels out in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. We've just recently opened one in Germany. But as a UK player, and particularly in London, we often require the support of additional distribution channel to help bring inbound customers into our business. We've avoided kind of the wholesale, the more broader distribution strategy with multiple partners that I think some of our peers have adopted. And instead we focused our efforts on our above-the-line campaign, growing our network, building sort of the power of the brand within the UK market.
Do you have an ambition to get higher than 93? Like the old Ryanair, before it decided to go back on GDSs, was 100% direct. Do you want to get to 100% direct, or are you happy for it to go lower than 93?
We just sort of manage it accordingly, really. We work, as I say, we work with Booking.com. We have a good relationship with them. I suspect it will ebb and flow. We certainly don't want to be 40, 50% indirect. I struggle to envisage a world probably where we'll be 100% direct, and it's not like an explicit aspiration of ours. We'll use the channel as and when it brings incremental business that's of good value to our overall performance. So that's how we kind of think about it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I want to ask some questions about you, because you've taken on this top job at this big hotel group. I was, again, back to the ads, I saw one of them was all about sleepless nights and how Britain has too many sleepless nights, and that's why they need to come and stay at a Premier Inn. So I was wondering, like, now running this group that's been doing very well over the past few years, what gives you sleepless nights?
Ooh. Well, I'm not really a worrier, I'll be honest with you. So I generally sleep quite well. When I'm not sleeping, it's generally because I'm noodling on what we need to do next. And I do think that the big questions that our industry needs to engage with is really, and what sort of keeps me awake at night, is what does the hotel of the future really look like? Because I think it will probably look quite different to the hotel that currently exists today. And I also think it's challenging hoteliers in terms of the types of skills that they have within the business today. We've brought quite a lot of new team members into the Premier Inn business, both primarily centrally, to provide us with new technology expertise, new digital expertise, just a better understanding of industry sectors that frankly we weren't familiar with. And then the other big thing I think that I probably ruminate on more than anything is how you integrate your digital experiences with your commercial engines and your customer engines to create real value for the guests in the long term. And again, I just think it's a really interesting technical challenge. It's not something that we'll or anyone else will fix overnight, but I think it's something that, as an industry, we need to kind of be thinking about and constantly trying to evolve.
And I guess there are a lot of independents who are kept up at night thinking, how can we afford to compete? We're small, we don't have the budgets, we can't run TV ads. So if I was to give you the sort of a beautiful little independent hotel to run, you can't afford Lenny Henry. What would you be doing? What would you be doing differently, do you think?
I think the fundamentals are, in terms of the products and service experience, are true for all hotels. Clean, comfortable room, and all that good stuff is true regardless of whether you're an independent, limited service chain like ourselves or one of the big luxury global players. I think the key difference for an independent hotel is you are providing a more of an experience, and therefore stamping your character, I think, on the property becomes ever more important. And I think from a marketing perspective, you're probably going to have to think a bit more cleverly around how you use your existing customer base to kind of market yourself virally and win that business back time and time again. Clearly that's also true for big brands like ourselves, but I think for smaller players, you've really got to focus on when you're going to get the highest return on your marketing investment, and it's probably that type of activity.
Okay, great, good tips. Yes, Leonard.
I have a question, and it's on missing out. I could run 100% through my own website by turning off some channels, right? And I could be perfectly happy with my costs, but that's not how I usually look at things. I want to try things. You want to try a different position. How do you know you're not missing out if you're saying we're simply not going to allow somebody to take that amount of money if you don't know what is the net contribution if you would?
Yeah.
So how do you get the Chinese guest to stay at the Pyramid and London Tower Hill if you're not giving an OTA an opportunity to take maybe 15% of your revenue, but the revenue would go up by 35%. And I have an example in Holland. There's a budget hotel chain, 70 hotels, I think. You probably know them, Bastion Hotels.
Yeah.
And they, in the past, refused to be on GDS. And I worked at Synexus back then, and we got them onto the GDS. And yeah, they got some extra costs, but for sure they made a lot more money.
Yeah. Well, we sort of take a long-term view, let's be honest. We look at, we think there's a big structural growth opportunity for us in the UK. You often hear the industry talk about a yield play when they talk about distribution. Personally, we prefer to preserve the value proposition. So even if I might short-term leave a little bit of money on the table, the thing I'm really focused on, where the value for my shareholders really exists, is the 20,000 rooms that we think we might be able to build over the next 5 years, getting to 85,000, which is the milestone that we're sort of striving for through to 2020. But it's a permanent question, and that's why, to the previous question, I don't ever envisage a world where, I don't yet see a world where we'd be 100% direct, because there are market segments where, just because of our brand presence, because of our profile in the UK, where a distribution partner clearly adds value to our business. And that's why we work. That's why we work with Booking, and have done probably, I think, since about 2008, 2009. So, it's an ongoing question. Clearly, data's often at the heart of trying to work it out. Little bits of trial and error, and it's something that we constantly have under review. Ultimately, of course, the other metric you can always look at is what occupancy are you achieving. Last year, I think our occupancy was around 81% nationally. So, we know we're filling our hotels, and we're doing that largely under our own steam. So we're sort of confident at the moment that where we are at the moment with just one partner is kind of the right place to be.
Great.
I can't get a question from someone in my own team.
Nice. As you said, we're quite confident. How do we make sure that we don't become arrogant and complacent?
Oh, I tell you what, it's a hard question from you. Well, I think, you can't rest on your laurels. We've built a great business in the UK, but there's no doubt that the dynamics in our industry are more volatile, I think, now than they probably were 10 years ago. We've got new players like Airbnb coming into our market. Obviously, OTAs have been a hot discussion all day today. I think you'll have other big online players will start to look at our marketplace with more interest. Amazon, businesses like that. I think we'll find the global hospitality sector quite an interesting place to be. And therefore, you're just going to have to keep raising your game. And if you don't raise your game in any competitive industry, and I think hospitality is a competitive industry, you will slowly but surely lose your luster. So you just got to keep focused. It's part of the joy, I think, of being part of a business like ours, and I'm sure it's part of the joy you all feel running your businesses on a day-to-day basis. It's the challenge that gets you out of bed. I can't envisage a world where we'll sit on our laurels. For one point, you and the rest of the team probably wouldn't let me.
Thank you. Great, well, on that note, we have one more quick one. These are after.
What changes have you seen with regards to how you get your direct bookings? So I'm thinking specifically about SEO, because the real estate on the Google homepage has changed massively over the last few years. So how have you had to modify your efforts to get consumers to come in the front door?
Well, I have to be a bit careful because I'm managing director of a public company, so I'm afraid I can't answer your question in too much detail. We've definitely seen a lot of change though. So you should be under no illusion. I think when I joined 5 or 6 years ago, the proportion of our business that came through a direct digital channel was much, much lower. And like many of you, of course, we're beginning to see mobile become more and more important. And then the dynamics within paid search, SEO, the proportion of our business coming through channels such as Meta is clearly extraordinarily dynamic. And we've got teams of individuals continually looking at those channels and trying to optimize it to maximize, our sort of the net contribution, if you like, from our activity. I'm afraid I can't really talk specifically about the patterns we're seeing because it's a bit commercially sensitive, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Cool, great. Well, thank you very much for that. And Simon, thank you so much for joining us.
No,
Give me your review. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect.